guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is part 2 for getting the glow. Part 1 will be linked below in the YouTube description as well as at the end of the video in case you missed it. Just a quick recap of what we're working with here. Some Trinity Stamps items, full moon, die and stencil, A2 tree frame die, the Halloween stamps and dies, and the Hocus Pocus gnomes stamps and dies. So here we saw a little bit of this yesterday, kind of how I figured out where my stamping needed to go, just doing a little bit of pencil tracing, and that way I know like where I need to stamp my things. And also it's going to tell me where I need to add my color, where that glow is going to be coming from. So from there, these are all of the die cut pieces that we have. And then this is the coloring that we did in part 1. So we've added our glow to our characters, kind of added all of the shading to them. We are going to play with this a bit more as this video progresses, but now we're going to be kind of setting the scene to put them in so that we can create that glow and the colored images work with the scene that we're going to set them in. So first one's first, this is the moon, the full moon die cut. This is the stencil that goes with it. So you can do bats, you can do the witch, but then it also gives you this little layer here where you can add some texture, some detail to your moon. I am working on a paper inking palette, and this just helps hold the stencil without any other adhesives. If you have any sections that kind of overlap your moon, you can use some low-tack tape. I had one right at the top here that I kind of missed, and this is just going to help make sure I don't get any ink where I don't want it. Since I want this to be super light, I am just using whatever is left over on my blending buddy from Trinity Stamps, the yellow one, just because I want it to be nice and light, so that it's not competing with anything. You know, it's a very large element of the card, and I don't want it to compete with the coloring of the witch. I want it to assist in setting the scene, helping us get that glow. You know, this is our glowing object. And then once I have that detail added, I am going to go around. This is my black blending buddy. And once again, I have not inked this up. I'm just using whatever is on the seasoned bristles of it and going around the edges. From here, we're going to do lots more ink blending. I do just want to say you absolutely can do this with your alcohol markers. I just find that I get an easier blend if I use ink blending to color my background elements. And also it saves me on ink. You know, Copic, in my case, that's what I'm using. There's other alcohol inks or other alcohol markers out there as well. But it's not cheap. It's expensive. And so if I have another way that I can get the same look that I'm going for, that's going to save me a little bit of money, I am a cheap chicken and I'm going to do it. So here, that little hill my wizard will sit on, I'm doing all green. And then this is the woods that's kind of going to frame our witch in the cauldron. So the two areas that would be green, the tree tops as well as the bottom kind of grassy area, I am coloring this, like adding my color as if it's the same color combination outside of the black that I would use for a daytime scene, but the amounts of which color I am using are different. So go ahead and lay down color. If you guys have watched my videos, you know I do all of my ink blending twice because I feel like it gives me a better blend. So that Twisted Citron is my base. Then I'm going to add the mowed lawn. And normally I would just add the rustic, what is it? Rustic Hills? Rustic, is that what it is? I can't remember. I apologize. Normally I would add that just as kind of like an accent color, but in this case, because our scenes are dark, they're set at nighttime, I am going to add much more of the darker green and bring it further into my scene. And then the obvious addition that I would not add in a daytime scene is of black. So I add that little bit of black, and you'd be surprised how even adding just a little bit of it really does create that contrast and give your scene depth and dimension. So once again, I am working out to my darkest color, and then from the darkest color, I'll go back into the lightest color. Now, some of them I have leftover ink on, so I have enough on there that I don't need to re-ink it, and some of them I do have to re-ink. It really just depends on kind of how juicy your ink pads are, how well seasoned your brushes, or in my case, my blending buddies. These are my favorite ones. Whichever one you have going on. The white portion that you see me leaving in the A2 tree frame is because that's going to be brown. But all of them, I am adding the color and leaving the area lightest where you will be able to see our light source. So in this case, because the cauldron is kind of in the middle, we're going to have some lighter areas all along the inside edges. If you remember from yesterday, we talked about thinking about the light source as if it was shooting out rays. So it's going to have the trees on either side will be lighter. Also, the foliage that's right above the cauldron will have a little bit of that glow, and possibly the grass, that's down at the bottom might have some as well. So I chose to just do one color of brown because I knew that to darken this up, I was going to be going in with my markers. So this is, technically it's mixed media, but we never think about mixed media like this, or at least I don't, using the ink blending and the alcohol markers in addition to that. But basically this, like the ink blending just is not as dark or as detailed as I want my scene to be. So I'm going to use these markers to utilize, adding those little details in, even though it is a dark scene and we're not going to see a ton of detail. I think that putting in that contrast, like those really dark colors, will definitely make a huge difference in the way that the whole scene reads. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm using the same browns that we used yesterday. I apologize for not showing them to you. It's an E55, 57, and 59. I did it all at one time, so typically I only show you guys my marker colors right at the beginning, and I did not think about the fact that I would have so much footage that I would need to split it into two, and that I probably should have showed them again. So I apologize. Here, this is my lightest color. I'm using this to blend out the areas that I want to be the lightest, but also to blend it into the treetops. So that way, it just kind of softens really nicely. And then we'll do the same thing with the greens, kind of go back over those browns to help them be incorporated much nicer. Here, this is just me kind of testing, where that glow needs to go. This is the V04, V as in Victor 04, that I used from yesterday, and I am adding that glow to the foliage. Now, if you remember when we talked yesterday, I had talked about how I was having a little bit of a struggle blending in the purple into the face of the witch and to just get that glow because it was kind of just blending into my browns. And you can see that with the trees here, that is true as well for our background scene. It was difficult for me to get that kind of pop of color on the tree bark. So one of the ways around that is you can leave a white edge, like not take your ink blending all the way to the edge. If you leave a white edge, then that would be a really clean place for your glow to live and would help make it extra bright. Again, this is me just double checking it. For all three of these, I am using this blue combination. For this one, this is the one that we talked about yesterday, is the backlighting. So our witch is in front of our light source. So her edges are going to be lighter because the lighting is coming from her back. So really the only parts you're going to be able to see with any real distinction are just the edges of her silhouette. And you'll see as we go through this and put it together that I am constantly like reevaluating and deciding whether or not I need to go darker. But I wanted to show you the blue. I am going to show it to you again and again, but I'm going to speed it up because honestly, it's the same thing every time. So this time. This is, the regular, more of my regular speed. It's still not real time. It is slightly sped up. But I go from my lightest color, that's Salty Ocean, and work my way out to my darkest color, Black Soot. That has not changed. That's still the same. And then from that Black Soot, I am going to work my way back in to my lightest color. I don't leave a completely white edge traditionally with the ink blending, because my object is white. Like my moon is white. So I don't want my moon to kind of blend into my sky. I want my moon to look like it's illuminating my sky. So by leaving in that, even though it's a paler, like light blue, by leaving that in, it's helping the moon to have that glow. And this requires an addition of no other colors, just the blues, which is why I still wanted to include it in here, because maybe, this is something that you're just trying to learn, and it will be easier to do the ink blending without the addition of a glowing color. So I am doing that. This one is the first one we're going to do the glow with, and this is a green glow. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is the Twisted Citron. And I like to go in with my glow color first, because then it gives me a perimeter for how much I need to bring my blue in. It just basically sets like a spacer or a guide, so that I know how far it needs to go. So just doing that, these are the same blues that we used on the other one, and I'm just going to do the same thing. So that's why I said I am going to speed it up, because I'm sure you've got the premise by now, right? It's the lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. We do it 2 times. And so here, just doing the same thing that we did before, I have those lines there, those guidelines that, basically are telling me where my hill is going to sit. And so that allows me to know where I need to take my sky colors to. So that white triangle that I'm leaving, like of course you could fill it in if you would like to. But I didn't feel the need to, because I'm going to have a die cut that will sit right over top of it, and you're not going to be able to see it. So just one other thing of note about the glow, just like I do all of the blue colors twice, I do the glow color twice as well. So when I get all the way back to the center, I go back in with that glow color. For this one, the cauldron that we colored yesterday is it's purple, but it's a bit on the pink side. And so I decided I was going to incorporate a little bit of the pink to help it maybe be a little bit brighter. Because remember, I told you I was struggling with the brightness of the glow. So I decided to do the pink and then the purple. Now, if we were doing the pink and then the blue, it would still create a purple. But I wanted that purple to be a little bit more predominant, since that is the color that I chose for the contents of the cauldron, also our light source. So now you see with this one, I don't have the edge of the die cut. I'm just doing the whole thing as if it is the darker color sky, because even the ground that I am going to put in will be dark. So I'm not worried about having to go over my ink blending. So I'm just, just working it like kind of in a halo, a circle all the way around. There was one part where I was like, this does not look as dark as I remember it being. Did I skip a color? I did not. I did not skip a color. I used all the colors. I just felt like for some reason it wasn't as dark as I thought it would be. Here's that brief break there where I'm like, did I do all the colors? Unsure. So then once we have this done, you guys, if you've been here before, you know I love to fully commit to the scene. And so that means doing some other things. This is a night scene. There will be stars. I'm helpless if not to add the stars. So I flipped over my moon so that it'll act like a little bit of a mask. And then because I am using distress inks, these react with water. So I'm actually going to do kind of like a 3-step. I'm going to spatter clean water on the background, which will give me very subtle stars that look further away. I am then going to mix some water in with some perfect pearls. You could also use Picket Fence has a paper splatter that is like a metallic white. I think it's called Snowflake. That one works really well also to add some shimmer to the background. And so these are going to be like a brighter stars, but they're only going to be so bright like when you catch them in the light. And then the last step, which will be bright all of the time, is the Copic Opaque White ink. And I'll mix that with just a little bit of water so that it's easier to spatter. Alternatively, you could mix white acrylic paint with a little bit of water. Did you see my little blob on there? I just scooped it off. It was fine. But you could use white acrylic paint with a little bit of water to get that white. If you don't have that, you could also use a white gel pen and kind of draw them in, the stars by hand. In this set, they also have some like stars and bright up, like really light pieces that, look like they're kind of glowing. You could stamp those in a white ink and create stars that way as well. For the sentiment, I chose to just do white heat embossing on black. And I chose some of them from the Halloween, like the Happy Halloween, I think will look really nice with that huge moon, because like we need a larger sentiment to carry that very large focal point. And then the other two are from the Hocus Pocus gnomes. One of them says have a magical Halloween, which is going to go with the wizard. And then this one, they have a Hocus Pocus and then they have a best witches, like not wishes, witches. And I really wanted to use the Hocus Pocus sentiment. And so I did a combination where the one with the witch in the cauldron says Hocus Pocus witches. So I viewed it as like a little bit of a naughty greeting, that you might say to a witchy friend that you have. I thought it was really cute. So I could probably send that to one of my sisters easily. So now here everything is kind of laid out and I am making sure that I'm happy with the scene. So the other two, the one that's flying doesn't need any ground because she's in the air. The wizard on the hill already has ground. So this little witch looks like she is just floating in the middle of this, forest, which she's magical. She could be floating. She could have, levitation powers. But for the sake of our card, we're going to put her on some ground. And I am just using the same, the darkest version browns and the darkest version greens to get in that ground, so that it does look like she's kind of set in these woods cooking up her little brew. With that said, if you watch my videos, I don't love a white outline. And typically in a scene card, I do go in and color them to blend them in. And that I will do that for this witch and for the wizard. For the witch who is flying, there was no need because her background is white. So there was legitimately no need to do it. So here, I tried very hard to match the ink blending. I highly recommend Sandy Allnock's Hex chart. It is a Copic chart or an Olo chart. She also has one for Olos, which is great, so that you can see the colors all laid out by color, and it makes it really easy to kind of match your ink blending. So I am eyeballing it. I started with an RV55, and that wasn't too far off, but it wasn't like perfect either. So I tried going over it with the V01. That was still not having it. So I went in with a V05 and tried that one. That matched a little bit better. So basically, if you don't have the exact color for your ink blended background, you can layer your colors of alcohol markers so you get something that is a good fit. So now I'm going to start building the cards. I glued down the moon flat, and then you guys, sometimes you just see the way it looks in your head and you can't get away from it. And that's pretty much what happened to me, because let me just tell you that popping up these things was kind of a pain in my tushy. But I'm glad I did it, because for the end goal, it does look so much better with them popped up. So for this one, I popped up my witch. I popped up both of my sentiments. And that just helped give it a little bit more added interest. So no regrets about popping them up, but man, it was a little bit time consuming. And that may be because I am I'm extra generous with my foam tape, because I don't want anything to be sagging. This might be a user error problem. It might be my own issue. So here I have glued my wizard to my hill, and then I'm just holding my hill in place so that I can trim it off, because I fully intend to pop up both the hill and the wizard. So in the first one, we glued the moon down. So our focal point was flat, and then popped up our kind of main character. In this case, we're going to pop up both the ground and our character. And then for the other one, the die cut is actually going to get popped up, and our character is going to be glued down flat. So there's, a couple of different ways. Here I was playing with where exactly I wanted to put it. I ended up just committing to kind of the top right-hand corner, and then adding some gems to kind of lead the eye of the recipient. So for this one, and again, when I tell you guys, being truthful, it still is a learning it's still a learning process for me every time. So even though maybe I'm more comfortable with the process of adding shadows or adding a glow than you guys are, there are still some things that I absolutely have to work through. And so this one, I put it all together, and there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't look bad, but it doesn't have that wow factor that I really wanted. And so I am going to go in, and again, I'm kind of playing with the glow. I realized pretty quickly that the V05 it wasn't going to be bright enough. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe it'll be brighter if I take everything else darker, and that contrast will help my witch stand out. Because right now the whole scene is pretty, but she certainly is not the focal point. And so I went through, I added some, darker greens to see if that helped. Now I'm going in with an RV04, which is a much brighter pink, to see if I can really get that glow to kind of pop off the page. And that wasn't working. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to darken up my witch. Can I darken her skin tone, darken her hat, accessories, darken her outfit, and see if that makes a huge difference? Same thing with this one. This is probably pretty scary for most of you guys, but she's not dark enough. So I went in with a C5. Honestly, I probably should have used a C7. And really those middle sections where there would not be much light, I went right over it with the grays because she should be darker for that glow to really have the impact. Now, if you find that it's really grayed out like your skin tones and stuff, you absolutely can go back over it. With your skin tone color or your dress color. I certainly did. And that will help it retain its original color just in a darker hue. But don't be afraid to kind of go in there and play a little bit with your colors, especially if you know that you're hesitant to use darker colors with something like this. The darker colors create that contrast and really make a huge difference. Here, I just wanted to make mention of this. Somebody had commented it and I read it, but then I forgot to comment back, but I will. Here, these two on the right are actually the original Wink of Stella. One is clear and one is white. Somebody had left me a message and said, hey, my clear one dries white. You probably have the white one. Now they have changed them where the white has a white lid and the clear has a clear lid. But if you put the good way to test it is if you put it down on a piece of dark cardstock and you don't just see shimmer, you see actual white color, that is a white that's a white glitter pen, and I have both of them. And I'm not going to lie, I have mixed them up for sure because they have the same lid. So now here I'm going in with my white gel pen and adding some highlights. And once again, even like this is normally my finishing touches. If you guys watch my video, you know that this is normally like the last thing I'm doing is add in shimmer and add in my white highlights, but I just didn't love it. And so I'm going back in. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm like, in order to get this glow to pop, I have to add darker color. And so the reason that I leave in the whole process, even though it is a longer video, and I leave it in for transparency, because you and I are not that different. Even I sometimes get a little hesitant about adding, so much dark color, but you have to trust the process and know that by really going in and punching in those dark colors, it will make the light colors sing. So I did go in first with my cool grays. I went in with a C9 and a C7. Then I switched over to my YG67 to kind of blend that out. And then the E59. And like you can tell there's so much difference now that you're really drawn in to look at the witch and not to look at the forest. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to add some darkness with my markers to really draw your eye into the wizard and his glow and not the rest of the scenery. If you leave them all done to the same level of color, then nothing really has the chance to shine. And with something like this where the drama is what makes the card really pop, then you have to be committed to what's going to give you the drama, which is the dark colors and the contrast. So here I'm just going to go in and add, I used some clear glitter rhinestones from Trinity to just kind of, finish off the card and accent my sentiments. But then really this is the last finishing step. So I hope that this 2-part series was really helpful to you guys to seeing how you can create that glow or, just a backlighting technique to really help your elements shine. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I do appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.